Folks, great to see you all here. I was very positively encouraged when the Law Society told me that over 100 people had signed up for this particular event. And then they went on to explain that this was the last CPD opportunity of the year. So it's good to see you here, and certainly I have been asked to talk a little bit about Lexcel from my perspective of a Lexcel assessor, to give you some of the insider secrets, if you like, as to what an assessor's looking for if you were to pursue it, but also to talk to you a little bit about Lexcel from an advisory point of view as well, and some of the things to bear in mind if you consider working towards it, and some of the things that can potentially be pitfalls as well. And I'm delighted to be joined today by my friend and colleague for a number of years, Melanie Norbury. Melanie has extensive experience as a lawyer, solicitor, working with Lexcel, with a broad variety of firms, everything from sole practitioners right up through to one of the roles that she currently has as the Chief Operating Officer for Hempson's. So what we'll probably do is just kind of bounce back and forth with a few sort of examples and things as we're going through. I would ask you to hold your questions till the end. What myself and Simon found whenever we took our travelling roadshow down to Skillen was we had some fantastic questions, but unfortunately that led to a little bit of kind of, to and fro and direct question answering, what kind of left us under a bit of pressure to get through all of the stuff that we needed to. So I'd greatly appreciate it if you could possibly hold your questions to the end. And another thing probably worth mentioning as well, as you've seen the cameras are here, this is the first time that the Law Society is actually going to make this available for online CPD purposes. So Next Level Impact, the organisation that I head up, will be hosting this footage on our website. So if you have any colleagues that haven't been able to make it here today, they'll be able to log in, register for access, and that will mean that they can get their CPD online. So technology prevails, and we've moved forward there. We're also going to put a few additional things up for those of you who have made it along to make it worth your while checking out the online stuff. Myself and Melanie did about a 10-15 minute interview that goes into more detail about the practical steps involved in implementing not only Lexcel but some of the other quality marks and standards that you've probably heard about, the likes of ISO, which is the International Standards Organization's quality mark. That's probably most recognized throughout the world as being a benchmark for quality within organizations, not only specifically law firms, but a broad range of sectors. And we also talk about investors and people, which I know is increasingly coming to the fore, that we hear law firms talking about. But a quick overview as to what I will be talking about, and certainly I will not be, I suppose, giving you death by PowerPoint. That's certainly not my style and not my approach. Hopefully I will be sharing with you some practical examples that you can take away and reflect upon in terms of how to best apply some of the approaches in order to implement these types of quality marks effectively within your organizations. Now, the first thing that I'd like for you to do is to have a look at the screen and tell me, just a quick show of hands, as to who's seen that picture before. Has anybody in the room seen that? Excellent. Normally there's a few hands go up, but it's brilliant to have such a fresh audience that's seeing that for the first time. Now, looking at that picture for the first time, what do you see? Oh, come on, don't be shy, folks. Shout at it. What do you see?
Face.
Okay, a face, yep. Anybody else?
Eskimo.
An Eskimo. Oh, I like that. Who said the Eskimo? Just give us a quick wave. Oh, brilliant. Okay. Now, according to statistics, about 85% of people, when they first look at that, see a face. A face that's facing over to the right-hand side, well, my right-hand side, your left-hand side of the room, chin tilted back slightly, eyes kind of halfway shut. It's been described in a number of ways by audiences that I've shown this to before. Somebody has described it as a Red Indian chief. Somebody else said the mother-in-law. When I look at it, I think Bono in a convertible with no shades on. But interestingly, we had somebody shout out an Eskimo. Apparently, only about 15% of the population see that whenever they look at the picture. Now, let me expand upon that description. Let me describe it to you as an Eskimo waving into the darkness. So if you look at the picture, you'll see the darkness you'll see an Eskimo that's wearing a big duffel coat. Must have heard that the snow was coming later on this afternoon. The Eskimo's facing away from us, and you can see where the Eskimo's arm is outstretched, waving into the darkness. The Eskimo's got one of those fur cuffs on the coat as well. You can see where the coat comes down. You can see the two legs protruding from underneath the coat as well. Now, I see a lot of smiling faces, so a lot of people are actually seeing that. But according to statistics again, 5% of the population never sees that, no matter how you tilt your head or how much you look at it. So if you're in one of those sort of 3 to 5% that just doesn't see it at all, stick up your hand. I didn't think anybody would. But the reason that I wanted to start off with that is that's the way I would propose for you to view Lexcel. It's a different way of looking at things. Now, okay, we all get set in our ways, and human nature being human nature, we see things in a certain way. That's the way we are used to doing things. We feel comfortable when we're doing things in those manners. And certainly that's what I find with the variety of firms that I have worked with. And part and parcel of the first stage is to appreciate and understand that what you're doing by embarking upon something such as Lexcel is taking the opportunity to step back and reflect upon the big picture, how you do things within your firm. What sorts of things are working well, what sorts of things could perhaps be done differently, and what you need to do to implement improvements. Now, there's a number of different ways that you can implement improvements within any business. And I suppose if you look at the different approaches that organisations have taken, they've maybe chosen to introduce new technology to improve their approaches. And I would be surprised if there's too many law firms within the room that don't have some form of case management system at your disposal at the minute. Whereas if we were talking about 10 years or so ago, it might have been a different matter. Similarly, if we look at how technology has impacted upon the world that we live in and the business that we do, just a very, very quick show of hands. Who has websites for their firm? Okay, so quite a number of hands going up. If I had asked the same question relating to who had websites 5 years ago, there would probably be only half of those hands up, and if I said 10 years ago, even less again. But if you look at how technology is impacting upon the world we live in, and you look at where people are turning to for access to information and so forth, you get words creeping into our language now that we never would have thought of 5 years or so ago. Nobody goes to the yellow pages anymore, they Google it. If you're looking for a solicitor in Belfast, what do? Go to Google and type in solicitor Belfast, and then maybe the type of law that you need support with. So you can see the impact of technology. You can also see the impact of technology on people's approaches. It means that things are done more efficiently, more streamlined, and more effectively for the most part if the technology and the approach marry together in an appropriate way. But one of the key things that is especially important that you need to bear in mind is the people. And what I would hope to talk about is how to bring those sorts of things together when you're working towards implementing standards of good practice. Now, I don't specialise in Lexcel. I work with a broad range of standards, so I'm going to also share with you some of the other standards that you may hear of, and some of the things that you might want to bear in mind whenever we look at those as well. But for any business, regardless of whether it's a small micro business with less than 10 people or a blue chip multinational, there's a number of things that you need to bear in mind in order to ensure performance improvement. In fact, if you want to look at a framework for running your business, running your law firm, I would suggest you have this concept in mind whenever you do so. Simon mentioned how him and his partner sat down for the first time and sort of took a strategic view of the business and looked at this whole business planning approach. Now, for some people, you might think, wow, that's really over my head, and it sounds very complicated. And I've seen some of these, War and Peace business plans, that need to be produced, and that sounds like a lot of bureaucracy. And folks, there's a streamlined and easy way to do this. If I were to say to you, what are the big hits for your firm next year? And you're not able to answer that in a consistent manner with your partners, I would suggest you do need to sit down and have a conversation. And have a conversation that essentially goes along something of the lines of, well, where are we now? Let's take stock of where we are as a firm, what's impacting upon us. Let's look to the year ahead, and let's anticipate what sorts of things might be coming down the line that we need to take account of, and we need to figure out what we're going to do about it. Now, if you were to have that conversation, where are we now, where are we going, and how are we going to get there, a useful framework to use is this, what's commonly known as a balanced scorecard approach to business planning. So essentially you look at those 4 quadrants and you say, right, from a financial point of view, what sorts of targets do we need to set for ourselves? If we were to set maybe 1 or 2 targets across each of our areas, what's it going to relate to? And the obvious ones are fee earning days, charges that you're going to raise, those sorts of things. But one of the things that you could potentially do as well is look at opportunities to introduce austerity measures within your business. Where can we save costs? That's something that you might do automatically within your organisation, but how do you proactively follow that through? What are the things that you can then do once you've set yourself a number of targets from a financial point of view? Well, the next logical step to it and to think about is what range of services you offer your customer base. Who are your customers? What range of services do you offer them? How do you offer those services? How effectively do you cross-promote the services that you provide? Moving on from that then to your processes, what is the step-by-step approach that you take to implementing your processes within your business? Is there consistency of approach? Are there any opportunities for improvement? And of course, in relation to the people within your business, what are the sorts of things that they could do to enhance the delivery of services and the way that the firm operates? So if you think about improving your business under those quadrants, there are opportunities to then gain benefit from aligning what you do within your practice to what can be internationally recognized as good practice. And quite often it's standards such as Lexcel, ISO, IIP that help you to then do that. If we start off with the top one, ISO. ISO is an internationally recognized standard. Many of your clients probably have ISO if you work with corporate clients, and it's a standard of good practice that is pretty much required for government work in order to gain work on public procurement lists and things like that. One of the standards that has become increasingly popular, especially with the likes of the construction sector, is the likes of ISO. Why? Because house building's dried up. The builders are all looking to try and get on public procurement lists, and hence this is one of the things that they need to do in order to achieve it. Investors and people, I would describe as being a framework of good practice for developing your people in line with business need. So we're not talking about just training people up for the sake of training people up. We're looking at specifically what sorts of things people need to be able to do to maximize their impact upon your business. And that's how I would kind of roughly describe investors and people. Lexcel sort of marries the two, if you like. Now, Lexcel is the only standard that's out there that is specifically focused upon the legal profession. In fact, a few weeks ago, what they did was they introduced Lexcel 4.1, and the likes of Melanie and myself were getting updated and trained on essentially minimal changes that they're making to Lexcel 4.1. But the reason that they're introducing Lexcel 4.1 is because Lexcel is now going international. And they're really putting a big push on Lexcel as an international standard for legal firms. And I'll talk to you in a little bit of detail about how Lexcel links in with the other standards and what I mean whenever I talk about it being an all-encompassing type approach. And I'll do that in a sort of a step-by-step way, but I'm conscious of the fact, Melanie, that we haven't brought you into the picture as such so far. Is there anything from what I've said so far that you'd like to comment upon, or perhaps give your perspective from with your solicitor background?
Yeah, I think an important point to make is the Lexcel standard is not rigid. I think when you first look at the manual and you look at the instructions, I know when I first looked at it some time ago now, I sort of thought it didn't apply to whichever practice. What was it actually aiming at? Where were we going as size of practice? And I would say that it applies to anybody who's a sole practitioner right up to a national organisation that I work for now with 5 sites.